What's this? Free sandwich? Well, I am kind of hungry. Looks yummy. What is this? Ham and Swiss? Ham and Swiss. What's that sound? What the?
Karma's a bitch!
I can't believe you dropped a piano on Kevin, and it was an expensive baby grand.
You put me in a catapult!
He deserved every ouchie he got.
I could have done worse.
That's for sure.
Hi.
Hi, this is Matthew,
This is Eric.
and we're on the Odd Atheist Friends.
Hi, I'm Aaron Ron.
Hi, I'm Andrew Torres of Opening Arguments.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ben Davis.
Hi, this is David G. McAfee.
Hello, I'm Dr. Hector Garcia.
Hello, I'm Dr. Jerry Coyne.
Hi, I'm Nate Phelps.
Hi, I'm Shelley Siegel.
Hi, I'm Thomas Smith of Serious Inquiries Only.
Hi, I'm Seth Andrews. I'm host of thethinkingatheist.com.
Hi, I'm Ethan Siegel.
Hi, I'm Robert Stanley of the Right to Reason podcast, and I took a left at the Valley.
And I loved it.
I know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with the religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner.
I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith in unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another bonus show of Left at the Valley. Today should be an interesting show as the ladies take over.
My show.
Kevin. We talked about this, darling. All good now? Beautiful. Broadcasting almost live from the city that woke up to find out that summer had packed her bags and left without a trace. I am your host today. My name is Kirsten, and joining me in studio are Nancy and Kristina, with Kevin, silenced as he is, as our tech and sound guy.
Can we turn off his mic so we don't get his...
Yes, we don't need the mouth breathing.
Yeah, Kevin.
All right, we'll be joined shortly by Amy and Amy from Secular Soup to talk about women. But first, we've got mail.
Oh, do we have to read it, or can we make Kevin read it because we're lazy? Okay.
Well, is it from one of our listeners? We like those.
It's from one of our listeners.
Oh, okay, good.
So, since Kevin is duct taped right now, because he wouldn't stop talking, I've got the letter right here. Hi, Kevin. There's no doubt that pesticides and monoculture is having a disastrous impact on bee populations, but this woman headed down the rabbit hole of conspiracy, big pharma, and anti-vax, which undermines her wider credibility in my eyes. I sensed your frustration that the conversation headed into areas that you weren't prepared for. Formaldehyde, mercury, and the vaccine cause autism conspiracies have
did she actually
all been completely debunked. The severity of the body argument is the antisocial diatribe of those enough to ignore the huge benefits that disease eradication brings through herd immunity. Yeah.
I'm so happy I wasn't there because
it would have gone on a lot longer.
Oh, well, she probably would have hung up because I would have been like, no.
Oh, I wish you had been. We all said we wanted you there.
There's more. Yeah. The hypocrisy of many anti-vaxxers is stark since they will willingly get vaccine for a range of diseases when they travel abroad, hepatitis, typhoid, yellow fever, rabies, to name but a few. But, for example, the UK losing its measles-free status from the WHO, polio still present in Afghanistan and Pakistan because eradication attempts are blocked by religious fundamentalists. This rhetoric is dangerous and is synonymous with shouting fire in a theater when there's none. The point about there being more vaccines now than in the past is bizarre unless she believes science stands still. By coincidence, I was invited to an event at the Liverpool School of Tropical, and there I read that the incidence of infant mortality due to diarrhea disease has decreased by 36% in Malawi since the introduction of of a rotavirus vaccine program. The rotavirus vaccine was first used in 1998, withdrawn due to an unforeseen problem identified by scientists, and reintroduced in 2006. Nasty Big Pharma saving all those infants. Still enjoying the show, but this episode was very frustrating.
Sorry to interrupt, but that was from John. I forgot to write that there. Thank you so much,
Kevin. Now get your duct tape back on.
Yeah, okay. I just want to quickly point out before you put the tape back on there. I just want to point out that sometimes we don't always do a show that's basically confrontational, or we don't necessarily confront our guests, and that's fine because we just want to leave them a forum to basically express their opinion. And we always try to be super friendly, even if we don't agree necessarily with our guests.
I wouldn't have been friendly.
Yeah, I know.
You would not have been.
I would not have been.
It's almost a good thing that you weren't here in that sense, but at the same time, just because we don't agree on that point doesn't mean that some of the other points she was making we weren't agreeing on.
True.
But I'm really glad, even though John might have been frustrated, he expressed his frustration in a wonderful way. He really did. He put down some very cogent thoughts, and I think that's a purpose of ours. Not very often, obviously, but we can be thought-provoking. We should leave the audience with something else to think about, because we left with a lot to think about as well.
Yes.
And I think
also higher blood pressure.
Yeah, well, but it was. I think it was great that it went off the rails into different directions, kept us on our toes, kept the listeners intrigued. Mm-hmm. So I think it fulfilled, even though frustrating for some, I think it was a really good episode.
Well, thank you for letting me. No, Nancy, no, you don't need to.
Bye, Kevin.
Bye.
It won't hurt if you just be quiet.
All right. We'll be back in a moment to talk to the hosts of Secular Soup.
Yoo-hoo! I'm Amy with a Y.
And I'm Amy with an I.
And we're the hosts of Secular Soup, where each week we offer up a bowl of real talk about atheism, feminism, politics, parenting, and whatever else we want to talk about because it's our podcast.
Just listen to what these random dudes are saying about our show.
This is what would happen if Daria and Jane grew up and started a podcast.
So if you like extremely foul-mouthed ladies with opinions, this is the podcast for you.
Grab a bowl and taste the magic. Slurp even this.
Fellow Atheist Podcast listeners.
We are the Godless Heathens Podcast.
Here's the details with no fine print.
We got new episodes available every other Sunday.
Sunday! There's three of us, just like the Holy Trinity.
I'm Don.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jerry.
Coming to you from a spare bedroom in exurban Atlanta,
where we'll examine the crossroads of politics and religion, but from the secular perspective.
Sometimes we get heavy, sometimes we get deep.
And no one is above reproach or mockery, especially each other.
It's more of what you want and less of what you don't.
So open your hearts and minds to the Godless Heathens in your podcast rotation.
And you just might learn something too.
By the end of this century, if emissions keep rising, the average temperature on Earth could go up another 4 to 8 degrees. What I'm saying is the planet's on fucking fire. There are a lot of things we could do to put it out. Are any of them free? No, of course not. Nothing's free, you idiots. Grow the fuck up. You're not children anymore. I didn't mind explaining photosynthesis to you when you were 12, but you're adults now, and this is an actual crisis. Got it?
I don't know where the lights are taking us, but something in the night is dangerous, and nothing's holding back the two of us.
Hello, Amy and Amy. Welcome back. I know it's been a very long time since we've talked to you, but to our listeners who weren't with us last time, would you ladies mind giving us a quick bio on who you are and what you do?
I'll just go ahead and start because the other Amy is apparently eating a sandwich right now and drinking some whiskey.
It's not whiskey, actually. It's
bourbon.
It's cucumber vodka in cherry water, in cherry flavored sparkling water. It is delicious.
Oh my gosh, I want it
That's
so
complicated.
bad.
I know.
I love everything cucumber.
I am Amy with a Y, and the person drinking the fancy water is Amy with an I, and we are from the Secular Soup podcast. And I live in Minnesota, United States of America, and Amy with an I lives in Texas.
You don't have to say United States. The US, no, not part of the United States of America. You don't have to say that. You just say Amy lives in Texas. Period.
That's what I mean. Yeah, there's no United States.
No,
it's just Texas.
I do not claim that.
Minnesota, you have to clarify which country you're in. But yes, we do a nonsensical podcast where we talk about all kinds of ridiculous shit. And we were talking with you ladies a few weeks ago and decided it would be really fun to just not have the male who's on the show here.
Exactly.
And just have the ladies
his
talk.
Name.
Yes.
I honestly literally don't
Jim?
remember his name.
I think it was Jim.
Chad?
You
feels
betcha.
right. Chad feels right.
Probably Chad.
Definitely Chad. All right.
Trevor or Chad, some kind of lacrosse name.
I'm not cool enough to be a Chad.
Hey, get your duct tape back on.
Hey, go away. He's back again.
Does anyone have a spray bottle or a can of corn?
No. All right. So today we're just going to be talking about an awesome topic, which is women, and kind of looking at our equality and where it's come. So I'll start by asking a pretty open-ended question here. What are some improvements that you have seen in your lifetime for women's equality?
Well, Amy earned the right to vote. She saw that in her lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't vote, and now I can.
She was a. Remember those suffragettes?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Finally, there's somebody older than me on this show. I'm so happy.
Oh, man.
Amy's a whole 2 years younger than me, so you're one to talk.
I know. I always
proud
like
of
to say
getting
that
that
I'm
right to
27 on this show, and I am not 27 because I have a 17-year-old, and I don't like people to do the math after that point.
You're not even close to 27.
No.
So something that has changed, I guess, in my lifetime, one thing that I have noticed is just not so much, I guess, feminism in general, but the way we raise kids. You know, we talk more about raising girls in a more gender neutral way. But having said that, I think we've actually gone backwards a little bit in that area, because when I was a kid, back in the 1870s, you basically had gender neutral clothing, and you know, especially when you didn't know what the sex of your baby was going to be, because there were no ultrasounds.
Everything was ducks or sailors.
Yeah, and now if you have a child and you go shopping with them, everything is gender specific. You've got, you know, down to the type of decoration in their bedroom. Everything's purple and pink or blue.
Yeah.
That's everything. And then we've got these gender reveal parties now that we never used to have.
Gross. Those are really gross.
So that's one area I think we've regressed in. But yeah, I don't have any good news on the feminism front. I don't know. What do you think, Amy?
I haven't really seen much. My perspective is very different, though, because I came from an environment that was very patriarchal. So I haven't seen much change as far as that environment goes.
She was a Mormon.
I was.
Fun.
It still is, and it still was, and it was then, and it still is. Just what the man says goes.
Yeah.
And you know, so I haven't really seen much change in that realm. And out in the real world, most of my supervisors are still male.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that's true.
You know, our representation in politics are male and white males. And I don't really, I mean, I guess it's been small changes, but not a whole lot of, we haven't really covered much ground.
Not a lot of leaps and bounds in that area.
In the past 40 years or so, no, I haven't seen much.
I feel like we do have a lot more options when it comes to nail polish, though.
Yes, for sure.
There's a lot more colors than there used to be.
And you can match your car to your nails.
Yes. So that's a good thing.
It's huge. Yeah. I actually think that's a huge.
That's all we need, really. Feminism done.
Yeah. Now, going back to what Amy was saying about with kids and how we've regressed a little bit with, like, before it used to be very gender neutral and now it's very much like the pink and purple versus the blue. Tangenting on that a little bit, have you seen any difference in, like, pressures on women for having kids?
I don't feel like that's changed at all. I think there's always been as much pressure on women to have kids. I think we're talking about it now, which is good. I think that more women are choosing to be child-free, and we're starting to accept that. And I think that is an awesome
They're not
thing.
Such a pariah.
Right. It's starting to become just like, oh, you don't want to have kids. That's fantastic. And Amy and I encourage everyone not to have kids on our podcast.
Daily.
Because
We're like,
we
do
don't
not have
recommend.
kids. No.
But on that front, I still feel like we have a long, long way to go as far as gender roles in parenting, how much is still expected of moms as opposed to dads.
Yeah.
Women still are expected
women
to have
just
kids.
do everything. Like, especially when I was a stay-home, Mormon. I was a stay-home mom for so long. My house, the order and cleanliness and the way my house was decorated and everything reflected on me as a person. Mm-hmm. So if my house was messy, I felt like I was a bad person.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now I wish I cared more.
But the interesting thing about this discussion is that you are going at it from the angle, because of your age, of having the freedoms to do things that weren't there back in my day. I'm not going to go back to the 1870s, because Amy's covered that really well, but I can take you back to the late 30s and early 40s, when there were barriers to do things, and that doesn't have to do with specific, gender-specific clothing or things like that.
Couldn't even wear pants in public.
Well,
for a while.
When girls went to school, they wore dresses and boys wore pants. Girls did not wear dresses. But even more important than that, it was a much more, believe it or not, male-dominated society. There were states where women could not buy property without having a man co-sign for her. The same thing for working. If you needed to sign a contract, if you were a teacher, you couldn't sign your own contract. A man had to do that for you.
That's so gross.
If you were a woman and you were married for a certain length of time, this is heading up more toward the 60s and 70s, but between the 40s and the 70s, if you were divorced and you had a credit card in your husband's name, you might have been paying for that and you might have been responsible for all the bills, but the credit card company, once you were divorced, you were a total alien. It was as though you never existed, you didn't have a credit history, and there were a lot of credit card companies that wouldn't even give you a credit card. You had to, and they didn't have the ones that you paid for necessarily. And you had to find companies, believe it or not, like Sears Roebuck, that would say, okay, we'll take you, but you have a limit. You can only charge up to $100 or $200. And if you maintain a good credit history, after the first 6 months, we'll expand the amount that you can have. The other areas that I think were a lot posed a lot of difficulty and barriers for women was that although women could go to law school, they weren't particularly welcome. They could go to law school, they could go to medical school, and there were women doctors and women attorneys. But if a woman wanted to be an engineer or go into a more male-dominated profession, perhaps even one that required a secondary education and a master's degree and a PhD, like physics or in the sciences, she was discouraged, or not even discouraged, but she applied to schools where they sent her letters back saying, we're sorry, we have no accommodations for women, thank you very much. And if she did get into a school and she did try to keep up with the men, not most of the research, but many times the men who were her mentors took credit for her work. Yeah. So even though she was equal in terms of brain power, she certainly wasn't in terms of recognition. So there have been doors that have opened to women in terms of schooling, in terms of job opportunities. But still there are areas where the door may be open, but it's not open wide enough to where women have the exact same opportunities. But if you lived in the society the way I did, where it was so dominated, you can see that, it may have taken 40 or 50 years to get to this point, so there's hope for the future, but lordy, it takes a long time for the culture, to change their attitudes about where women, quote, belong, unquote, and where they don't.
And I think for me, because I'm only 23, so I've not been around long to see a massive change.
Yeah.
See, I mean, me too, basically.
Yeah.
I'm basically the same age.
But I definitely in the last, I would say since I started becoming politically aware, which was in 2015 with the presidential campaign, that's kind of where I started realizing that there was a bigger world.
Did you Google his nudes too, or was it just me?
Oh God, no. I don't need that in my brain.
Just me.
No. I don't even want to think about that.
I won't send them to you then.
Hey.
It was definitely, I've definitely noticed a massive shift in how society sees women, and definitely in the specific area of women as sexual beings, and the fact that we have autonomy and that you can't just do whatever you want, and that we don't just make things up for attention. And that I have definitely noticed, and specifically since the Me Too movement started.
Yeah.
But people still don't believe women, which is infuriating. Yes. Because Kavanaugh's still sitting on the Supreme Court.
And I think the big thing that the Me Too movement has done has it's really sad when you see how many people still think well, she's just making it up. But I think what has changed culturally is the fact that women are more likely to come forward. And there are still so many women who don't, but I think it's a lot more when you realize how when you realize how many women this has happened to, because I know for a lot of people that they think, oh, well, it just happened to me.
But they don't feel so alone now.
Yeah, because when you're taken advantage of by someone, you think, oh, it was just me. No one will believe me because it was just me. And you think, oh, it's my word against theirs. But with the Me Too movement, you get so many people coming out and saying these allegations, you realize it's not just me against them. It's a fuck ton of women and sometimes men against them.
Yeah.
And it's the safety in numbers thing.
Yeah. The problem that people are running into is the flip side of that is it becomes almost white noise, almost. Yeah. Where if there's so many people saying, yeah, me too, it's like, yeah, we get it. Cool. But meanwhile, I'm going to go vote this guy in.
Yeah. But I definitely think it has shifted the understanding that it happens a lot. Mm-hmm. Because before...
Well, I think it does. And people are realizing that people they know everybody has a story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't know if Amy and I shared it on our shows, but I'm sure all of us have our stories. Yeah. All of us are oh yeah, this age I was sexualized, this age I was touched, this age this happened,
Yeah.
Well, back in the 50s and 60s, when I was, a young person, women didn't talk about it. Mm-hmm. If they talked about it, they had maybe one best friend. But it in terms of our knowing that men, would take advantage of women and there was harassment, we really didn't hear about it. I mean, it wasn't talked about.
Yeah.
In fact, there were instances, I think perhaps more instances than not, where women would condemn other women.
Yeah.
And
women didn't get the support.
Women are the worst.
Did.
They're the worst ones.
Either you were a good girl or you were a slut, and we didn't call it slut shaming, but a lot of women said, well, if she didn't wear her dresses so short, well, she does wear those V-necks, and although we didn't, sit around gleefully saying she was asking for it, it still was there in the culture that if she had dressed more appropriately, this probably wouldn't have happened. And that's
if she had been in church
long
instead
time
of down that alley, or
And I do think that is still, with the clothing option, I think that is still around.
Yeah.
Because like that's one thing that's like, oh, she shouldn't have worn that, or like, why were you wearing that?
But I think it is.
Well, there's even cases where like you're at a party, you shouldn't have been at that party. It's like you shouldn't be.
But I think
I think we're finally getting pushback on that idea at least.
Yeah. But I think it's taken a while for women to band together and say, you know, we're not going to put up with this. It's not our fault.
I think the biggest shift that I know for myself, that is a journey I'm still going through, is when something happens to you, that someone takes advantage of you, you feel so much shame around it. And that, I think, is one of the things that kept so many women silent, was the shame. That, I let this happen. I did something to cause this.
I shouldn't have been so nice. I shouldn't have encouraged. I shouldn't have encouraged.
Or
did something.
I should have screamed louder. I should have fought harder. And it's like, so many women are realizing, and this idea is being reinforced, that it's not shameful that it happened to you. It's shameful that they did it.
Yeah.
It's shameful that the person acted that way, that they took advantage of you. And I think the shame is shifting.
It's
because
shifting
there are
the blame
so
there.
many men that now are feeling that shame. That, like, 'cause I'm actually on a Facebook group that there was a couple weeks ago where men were sharing their stories of where they unintentionally took advantage of women, and looking back now, they realize, oh wow, I didn't realize that I took advantage of her, but I definitely took advantage of this person. And just realizing that their actions, for them, they thought, oh well, this person's doing this because they like me, and they didn't realize that they had a power dynamic that made...
We're socialized to make them comfortable and happy.
Exactly. And I think that shift of understanding of the power dynamic in relationships and in interactions is very helpful for a lot of people to understand that it's okay that these things happen to you because it's not your fault.
Right.
And like the feelings that you have are totally like valid. Like it's okay if you're angry at the person or whatever.
Absolutely.
Like you're allowed to feel what you're feeling.
Yeah.
Well, like our culture, you know, until very recently, really has placed women in a submissive role in almost across the board. And growing up in the 30s and 40s and 50s, that was so prevalent, in that if you wanted to do something, you checked with your father, you checked with your husband, and if they approved of your doing it, and in very rare cases would women defy convention and say, I really don't care what anyone thinks, this is my goal and I'm going to stick to it. And we all envied that kind of woman in ourselves, but we had very few role models of women who were strong enough to be able to say, this is what I think, and it doesn't make any difference what he thinks. He needs to understand that's how I am, and I'm going to proceed in this world. But to have to overcome that whole feeling that you're not as good as, you're not as smart as, and you're not as able as, has taken that has taken a long time, because we were brainwashed. It was absolutely brainwashed. And it's you know, we've got to come out of it, and finally we are.
Well, I wasn't. I was raised basically in the 50s then. Because the Mormon Church is basically 1950s.
Yeah.
I'm curious actually to see what Nancy thinks about this other topic, because I think one of the biggest things maybe in history that has changed what women are able to do is birth control. And it would have been so interesting to have been around when the birth control pill was first coming out, and to have seen how people reacted to that, because it was such a major, not only a cultural shift, but it forever changed what we could do. You know, if you're at home with 10 kids,
own body.
We were
and when you have 10 kids at home, you can't do anything else. But now we actually have that option. And I don't know. I'm curious to see what it was like.
Have you priced out children's organs? You can do it.
Yeah.
Oh my God. We were
just saying. You have options.
It was an instant feeling of liberation. It really was. During the 50s, I'm trying to think when birth control, was it in the 70s that birth control?
I have no idea.
It was the 60s.
60s, late 60s, 70s, and there were some states that actually had laws against birth control, but then slowly...
Was it Texas? It was Texas.
Texas, yeah.
Texas still has laws.
Texas just passed it last year. We can have it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
They're so backwards.
But the women themselves were just, I can't think of anybody unless, they had a religion like, being Catholic where they were, it was banned. It was a bad thing. But women were 100% liberated from that. In the 1950s, what started women, I think, feeling that they deserved to be liberated more was The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan. And if you want to know how women felt up to that publishing date and then after, that's really the book that started it. But to answer your question, Amy, women were just absolutely delighted. Men not so much, but women finally
We don't really care what they think, though, right?
Yeah, women finally felt that they could have employment, they could go to school, they could do an awful lot, and compete, maybe not on a level playing field, but one that was certainly more level now that they can control their bodies.
It's that step in the door. It kind of, with birth control and that, it gives them a little bit more power over their own bodies and what they're able to do.
Yeah, and
they're not just baby factories.
Yeah, it was interesting. The marketing of birth control was really interesting because the pharmaceutical companies didn't want women to feel as though they were taking a medication. They understood women's psyche enough to know that they didn't want women tied in to having to take. So they packaged them in like little compacts, little pink compacts and other little things that would fit into your purse so that they really looked, part of your feminine daily routine and not a medication. That helped as well.
Because I'm assuming at that time, mental illness was still very frowned upon and like, oh, you have to take meds. You're crazy.
Yeah.
And good thing we're so far away from that now, right?
Yeah, right?
And it's nice now that they have so many options where, like, for birth control and things like that.
When I had my tubal ligation.
That's what I did too. It's fantastic.
But when I had it, when it first started in the 70s, I think, or very early 80s, you had to get your doctor's permission. You couldn't just say, I've got 3 kids, that's enough. I've got 2 kids, that's enough. You had to have like 3 children. You had to, there was a whole different protocol that you had to have before the doctor would even do the operation. Now it's when you want it, you can have it. But back then, I think
not in America.
I was going to say
this is in the U.S.
You have to have a certain number of kids, be over a certain age.
Right.
You can't just sterilize yourself. You can't.
Yeah, I know.
I should say that's not the law, but that's how doctors.
Well, that's a lot of doctors do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's not just like a quick, hop, skip, and a jump. You can do it up here either. I haven't looked into it myself, but I know a friend of mine is looking into it. So I'll have to definitely discuss with her. But I know it wasn't just I want it, I can get it, and we're done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not so easy.
You guys have that sweet free healthcare up there.
Right?
So
yeah, we do.
That probably makes it easier.
Does Justin Trudeau come to your bedside if you have surgery?
No, he does not.
And nurse you back to health and hold your hand.
But the moose do.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
You go in for surgery, you got a baby moose.
It's not even like a close second, but it's in the same realm.
Do all the hospitals serve Tim Hortons?
Yes. Yes. Or, we also have Starbucks sometimes.
All of the hospitals will have either a Tim Hortons
or
a Starbucks or I think probably a Subway.
Really? Subway?
Nice.
I feel like it would be Subway, but definitely Tim Hortons or Starbucks. There's going to be one coffee shop in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love Tim Hortons.
And another one not too far away.
Now I want Tim Hortons.
You always want Tim Hortons.
I do.
That's why they know you at that Tim Hortons.
I've never had Tim Hortons.
You're missing out.
You are.
You'll just have to come up
We
here
actually
and
had
visit.
one in my town. We had one in my town for like 6 months, and then it closed because Burger King bought all the Tim Hortons. And
You guys are just gross down there, so couldn't handle the amazingness.
Well, come on up here and we'll do a Tim Hortons tourism.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
I'm
like
not
every
going
5
up
minutes?
there once all the straight white guys go there, so we'll go there beforehand.
So,
oh yeah, we're sending all the straight white guys your way.
We're about to mess up your whole country. So,
I know, right? So earlier you were talking about how I think you said you have a 17-year-old child, and I'm curious how for them because I know for the younger kids growing up now, like they are so I don't know the right word, but more aware of like how like
they're woke.
Like school dress codes are horrible.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
and
like I think it's woke, right?
Yeah,
Is that what the kids are saying?
They're woke.
They're woke as fuck.
And just like how like for kids nowadays, like when they're walking down the street and like creeps are like whistling at them, because I was first catcalled when I was like 16.
Yeah.
No, but the first time someone like super checked me out, and I was like, oh my god, I'm going to be
14?
raped. 13.
Yeah,
because this person actually followed me,
sweet
like was following me, and I'm like, you're gonna be okay. Yeah, it was when I was 13, but I think kids nowadays like realize that they can like.
They are more aware of things, and they're just so open about things that would have blown my mind back in the 80s when I was growing up, like sexuality and, just everything. They're just it's just so open. Because I have, he's almost 17. My oldest is almost 17. And then I have, my second is 14 today.
Oh,
and then I have a 9-year-old daughter. I sent him a text. We're good.
Okay, good.
No, I'll see him tomorrow. He's at his dad's today. Yeah. But I have a 9-year-old daughter, and they'll just like my junior. He's a junior in high school, and he'll just be like, I have this friend who's transitioning, and we're really supportive of her, and this friend is, bi, and then this friend is asexual, and this friend is this, and this friend is, and I'm just like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, we had the one gay guy in high school that hung out with all the cosmetology girls so he wouldn't get beat up.
Yeah.
I
don't think I even had that in high school. We just didn't know. It wasn't even something that we talked about in high school.
He did my hair for my graduation pictures, and
nice.
Killed.
Well, the guy who had a locker next to me all through school, because our last names were right next to each other, he was gay. I had no idea all through high school, and I'm sure high school was miserable hell for him. But it wasn't
Minnesota,
something
guaranteed.
It always is. But I remember us in the 80s and 90s just not. It's not that we wouldn't discuss it. It just didn't even come onto our radar. We never thought to discuss it. Whereas,
even in the movies that you go back and watch, like the slurs are so prevalent.
Oh yeah.
And you go back and watch things, and you're like, oh, I'm embarrassed.
Yeah, you
for
can't
all of us.
like
I am embarrassed for all of us.
And
it's hard to like anything you used to, because
right. I think Clueless has aged well, but I'm not entirely sure because I haven't watched it again.
Clueless is amazing. Clueless is still amazing.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
I don't want it to be like Uncle Buck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm nervous about that.
I definitely think the younger generation is where when they start. Like, you can see it right now with Ocasio-Cortez going into Congress, and
they don't know what to do with her.
Oh my gosh, I know.
Fantastic. They're like, oh, you're an angry woman, blah, blah, blah. That bitch, she was like, whatever, fuck you, I don't care.
And I definitely think now that they are starting to become older and hit that voting age and being more vocal and entering the workplaces, I think that is where we are going to really start seeing this massive shift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When my daughter's generation hits, like she's 9.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like it is, she's a force just herself, and all of her friends are forces. So it's a little tangent example of last year, my boyfriend at the time, well, he's still my boyfriend, but he was my boyfriend then too. But he was taking my kids trick-or-treating, and she ran into one of her friends just out in the street.
Yeah.
And this girl, she's like quiet and shy and super sweet, stepped between my daughter and my boyfriend and turned towards my daughter and says, "Do you know him?"
Oh my gosh.
this little 8-year-old girl, like tiny little wispy thing. And my daughter's like, oh yeah, it's my mom's boyfriend. He's fine. He's taking us trick-or-treating. Because I had like fucked up my knee or something, and so I couldn't do it. And so she was like, yeah, I know him. And she was like, okay, good. And then she turned towards me and she was like, hi, I'm Allison. She introduced herself then.
That makes me almost tear up. That's amazing.
Like, it's so nice to see even like girls as young as that, like standing up for each other and supporting each other.
Did. She stepped between them, and he came home and he was like, I'm impressed with her friends. She's a little scary, though.
I have great hopes for the generation that's starting at her age, 8 and 9, because nowadays you see the younger people protesting and being activists. It's like the ones from Florida, the Parkland, and it's like yesterday, the climate change.
Yes, that was amazing.
It used to be that if young people wanted to get out and protest, their parents would yank them back and say, "Oh no, you're not going to do this."
No, their parents are encouraging it.
Yeah, you've got to stay in school.
Because their parents are our generation, which are the Gen Xers. Yeah, and we're mad.
Exactly.
So now what's going to happen, I think, is because the younger generation is used to expressing themselves and being listened to, I think they're going to continue on a paths of activism. Hopefully, it's going to be in the directions that in the values that we have. But even so, I think as soon as this older generation, the 80 and some odd, fade away into history, I think there's great hope for the younger ones, because they're having a foundation of activism and understanding the issues and being able to express them like adults.
Especially now that they realize you don't need any qualifications to be president.
Exactly.
You want to get into politics? You can go into politics.
Yeah.
I think one of the major things...
Hey, fuck you, Kevin.
It's a tagline for the show. Fuck you, Kevin.
Sorry, he did a what's it called?
Buzzer?
A sound effect, and I'm just like, fuck you.
Well, I think one of the things that goes kind of along with that is, I only have 2 boys, no girls. Can't raise them to be badass girls, but I have one 15-year-old and one 9-year-old, and I've noticed with both of them just going through school, and I've talked about this on our show before, but they are, in general, they're still assholes, but in general, kids are becoming kinder. And I think a lot of that is because of actual anti-bullying programs and discussion about bullying. We didn't have, when I was a kid,
differences. And
nobody talked about bullying when I was kids. A lot of it went on, but it was just, that's what happens. But now teachers are proactive about it.
We're going to make fun of him.
Yeah, and at my younger son's school, they have a buddy bench, and it's just outside. It's a bench, and if they tell the kids, if you're feeling kind of shy, or if you're, but you want to play with someone, but you're not sure, go sit on the bench.
That's magical.
And then another kid comes over and plays.
I've heard about that.
It works great, yeah.
That's so cool.
But they're just becoming, and I think a lot of that, too, is accepting of differences. Now that as much as people complain about how everybody's got a diagnosis, at least now we're talking about differences and accepting that, and kids feel more comfortable being themselves.
No one is quote unquote normal.
Exactly.
Everybody has their own differences and their own things and their own individuality instead of just everybody being the same. And then there's that one outlier that, is in a wheelchair.
And as parents, I think my generation is pushing back a lot on our parents that are, when it comes to our kids saying, they're not really anxious, they're just this or they're just that, but
why
as
don't you
parents,
just
I think
them more. That's what I got.
Oh
just
my gosh, seriously?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
they
really?
need to read some studies on how that actually helps your children, because it does not.
No, it does not.
I would ask her that. I'm like, no, because even when I was Mormon, I wouldn't spank my kids. And my mom was so adamant that I was raising monsters because I refused to spank them. And so anytime there was any behavioral problem, she would say, well, you brought this on yourself and you created this monster. Now you just have to deal with it. That was her response.
Yeah, my dad used his belt and that did not work.
Yeah, I would basically ask him, is that all you've got? So,
yeah.
And now look at me.
You turned out great.
I know, but also spanking's not a deterrent is what I'm saying.
No.
No.
It's definitely not.
It also doesn't raise kids with like good secure attachments. Like that raises kids that are more likely to have depression and anxiety and bipolar. So yeah, it does not.
And basically,
help
the American Pediatrics Association has basically said it's one of the worst things you can do to your kids, aside from, egregious actual abuse, is spanking.
Yeah.
Well, Amy with an I, you may relate to this because I taught in the Hearst Euless Bedford system for 10 years. And at that time in Texas, the teachers could spank. They had paddles.
I grew up with corporal punishment.
Yeah, I mean, the kid was brought by the teacher into the principal's room. The paddle was hanging on the wall, so everybody knew it was there. And the kid was told, bend over, and he got as many smacks and the behind as the teacher and the principal thought he merited. And as a speech pathologist, thank goodness, we had a pass, because since we were in the school, for remediation, and helping, we couldn't witness, because you had to have a witness for spanking. But I think that's done with. But once you say it's okay to spank in school,
actually, Ted Cruz comes to my work sometimes and spanks us individually. But I think that's more of a personal preference.
I think another big thing that I think has influenced this younger generation, and in our generation as well, is psychology. I think is a lot more understood, because for my generation, going to a counselor
and not just
is totally normal.
Thinking, and or just go to your shrink, go to your head doctor.
But I also think, especially in the school system, is we now understand what stress does to the brain.
Yeah.
And there's a certain amount of stress that's good, and then over that, your brain shuts down.
And that's where I live, is whatever's after that.
Oh, I know. Me too.
Same.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although this coconut vodka is helpful. It is helpful.
That does sound really good.
Well, I think the fact that
I'll send a picture of the bottle.
The fact that we are talking so much more about mental illness is so helpful, especially as a woman who went through pregnancy and had severe depression. I would kind of think back about how women must have gone through that in, pretty much any other time except now, and how miserable that had to have been with no help, no one to talk to about it,
and
no medication. It's no joke.
Debilitating. I remember I had that so severely with my now 14-year-old, the one today, 14. He would just cry and cry and cry, and I would just shut him in the other room because I didn't care. I remember that. I didn't want harm to come to him, but I just didn't care.
And would you say, before, it used to be, if you were dealing with the depression, you would just kind of have to pretend like nothing was wrong? Whereas now it's a little bit more.
I ignored it for 4 months because I was Mormon, and I know they use that for a lot of excuse for a lot of things, but really, trust me, a lot. But no, it was you just are supposed to bounce back. I was also supposed to be a size 2, even though I never was a size 2 to begin with.
I think that
you're just supposed to ignore it. But I went to my doctor and I was like, hey, I think I'm having problems with postpartum depression. And he was like, you're not the first person to come to me today for this. It's not a big deal.
Wow.
He wrote me the prescription. Everything was cool. It was fine. My husband at the time took some convincing that it was real and I wasn't just being a lazy asshole ignoring my kids. But,
I definitely think for talking about feminism and women's issues in this one aspect, and not even just women, even for men, the understanding that
mental health stigma is huge.
Well, yeah, and being able to express I'm just having a bad day, and understanding that depression isn't just being sad. It's your brain is changed, and
that's usually how it doesn't even manifest, especially in men. Men who are depressed are angry and lash out, and
and
I think one of the ways that feminism helps men too, which is something men don't tend to realize, but with my boys, the oldest one has a severe anxiety disorder, and he's been on meds since he was 11, and he's been in counseling. But, 20, 30 years ago, he would have been told to suck it up.
Totally.
And go to school and quit whining.
Or he would have been beat because, he's not doing what he's supposed to. Yeah.
Yes, or he would have been smoking pot nonstop a year ago without me finding, there was just so many horrible outcomes, but that's what you had to do to be a man and toughen up. Whereas now it's okay for them to do that, to go to counseling and to acknowledge that they just have a mental illness and it's okay. And, I think we're coming a long way with that.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I do actually have a recording of me depressed in case you're interested.
Fuck off.
Ugh.
Wait, what are you doing on the recording?
What do you want?
No, actually, it's a recording of me. You want to hear it?
I have a feeling it's going to be a joke.
This sounds like a setup for a bad joke.
It does.
Same.
It is.
Okay, what do you got, Kevin?
Crush your enemies.
Oh my God.
Hear the lamentation of your women.
Oh my God.
This is why we have you muted right now, Kevin.
Yes.
Okay.
I feel like I missed something good.
Oh, can you guys not hear what he's playing?
No.
Okay, well, you'll just have to go back and listen to it.
Okay. It'll be a surprise.
Exactly.
It will be a surprise.
Was it good?
It was decent.
It was Kevin.
It was very Kevin. Very
Was
Kevin.
it from Hamilton? Because if it was from Hamilton.
No, it was Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, ew.
Yeah.
Gross.
But
disgusting.
Just a little caveat. There was counseling available, 20, 30 years ago, but it was so hard to find. It wasn't taught in medical school. The doctors didn't understand about counseling. It was just, do what I say, honey, because, I know what's best. And women really weren't involved in their care as much. But there, thank goodness, there were doctors, and a lot of women, their therapy was other women just sitting around and chatting and finding a circle of friends who were supportive and helpful. And it was like the dark ages of counseling and help for women who were depressed. But those few doctors, were activists, and they did get other schools to be able to include that in the curriculum, so that we have come a long way. But
we really have.
Unless you were upper middle class and had access to that, that's fine. But if you were poor or in a lower class, counseling, forget it. You needed the money for milk and bread.
Yeah, and
I think
much like
if you
everything.
believed in it, because I grew up thinking, or being told, not thinking this, that therapy was for people who didn't believe in God.
Yeah.
Because you didn't need therapy if you had God and Jesus in your life, because why would you need therapy? It's all just in your head and you just can pray it away. So that's how I was raised, was we had therapists, but don't you dare go to a therapist.
Yeah, I just look back at the huge difference between my son, how he's being raised, and the
my kids go to therapy every week.
That's awesome.
Yeah, my brother I'm convinced my brother had just as bad of an anxiety disorder as a kid, but back then he was just, my mom every morning had to struggle to make sure he got to school and had to force him to go, and he was miserable for so many years because you couldn't put a name on it. It was just, he's shy. Which isn't the case at all. But
my brother is 38 years old. And he got diagnosed with a major mental illness about 3 years ago. This is something that has been with him from his entire life, for all 38 years. And this is something that it showed signs. It manifested itself all growing up. I saw it. Everybody saw it. But no one put a name to it. He was just the bad kid. And now, 3 years ago, he got this diagnosis, and it was like, duh. Like, as soon as he called me and told me, he told my sister, he told all of us, everything clicked into place, and we got it. Like, it was like, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that makes sense.
I totally get that.
Yeah, we do.
Right, but the fact that he wasn't diagnosed, 20 years ago is infuriating to all of us. Because it was the whole just pray it away, or if you have God, you don't need any kind of, mental help.
Well, and be a man in his case.
Yeah. It's infuriating to me that he had to wait until he was, a grown up.
Yeah.
And it was like by accident.
And then finally you get these answers, and it's like, I'm not just like this horrible person. There's actually a reason why this is happening.
And it's like, functions differently. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's almost like relieving in a way because you're like, oh my God, I can put a name to it now.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And there's treatments, and it's
you don't just have to suck it up and move on. You can actually get the help that you need.
Yeah. Right.
I know for myself, looking at like how women have progressed, I'm going to take a little bit of a jump here, but in like body positivity.
Wow, you never do that. That's rude.
I know.
No, yeah. Same topic.
Because I know for myself, like, you know, I'm a curvy girl. I'm not a really slim, you know.
You're not a twig like me.
I am not a twig. And I know growing up, like, I had, like, zero self-confidence. Like, I didn't want to be in the spotlight. I covered up, like, didn't want to be seen.
Same.
And, like, you didn't see a lot of, like, curvy women in media. And I feel like that's definitely changing a lot now as you're seeing a lot more diversity in, like, color and gender and, like, size.
And they're the sexy person, not just the funny friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say that, and the one time you did see anyone that was larger,
she had like the chubby
Yeah.
funny friend, but she's not the romantic interest. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And whereas now it's like so much easier to see that and realize that, you know, I am beautiful, and like it's okay to be not a twig and to be a different size, because it's okay to love yourself.
Some guys actually like thoroughly prefer that. Like everybody has their own type, and that is some people's specific type.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of that is just because we're more and more starting to realize that our value doesn't depend on what we look like. You know,
exactly.
As a society, we're starting to realize I don't have to spend my life solely concerned about what I look like for other people.
Wait, are you
focus
serious?
on the things I want to do.
I'm not going to shower then.
Except for you, Amy. Ignore everything I just said.
I am not showering. I am just going...
I don't shower anyway. It's fine. I don't care. Not where do I offend.
And I really have to give credit to a lot of the fashion designers that listened to women, because again, in my youth, you know, when you'd go to the store, if you were petite or you were curvy, forget it. I mean, everything was like size, 9, 10, 11, 12, and maybe 14.
Now
and
it's size
after
4.
that, you either had, you had sacks to wear that made you look 15 years older, or you had to go and have everything that you wore, hemmed, 8 inches, so that you look like you were a normal human being. And then
I have the best of both worlds, where I'm petite and curvy, so I'm basically screwed.
Yeah. I mean, if you were shy or had a negative self-image or a diminished self-image, clothes sure didn't help you at all.
And I know, like, even for myself growing up, and even now, to go to a store and to find a decent selection of things that you actually like, first of all, that aren't going to cost you...
Especially if you try to go to, like, a Gap.
That aren't going to cost you a fortune.
Like, there's that one rack in the back, you're like, oh, this is adorable. I can get this shirt in the entire store.
I've
right here.
actually gotten mad at stores. Not that I've said anything, but I've gone into a store and I'm like, this is all you have? Like, this is bullshit.
Yeah. So I've discovered Macy's online. You can't go into a Macy's. I mean, you can, but sometimes. But Macy's online has a great plus size selection.
Mm-hmm. And I find, like, online is where you kind of have to go.
Oh, yeah.
But
the internet is magic.
Find them, because now
the internet is magical.
Yeah, now if you want something sexy and your size is in the 20s or whatever it is, you can look sexy, and it's not going to cost you $400 or $500.
Exactly.
It's going to be $49.95, just like everybody else.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more accessible now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And one thing for myself that I've noticed is, because I am the what's it called, the sample size. So I've literally never had this issue, but one thing I've noticed is that styles are a lot more, it's a lot easier to find functional clothing instead of like clothing that's like designed to be sexy. Like, if I want comfy, I can find that now.
Yeah.
You know what we still can't get, though, universally?
Pockets.
Fucking pockets.
Oh,
goddamn pockets.
I've literally had pants that had fake pockets. Like, they didn't have any, but they were jeans. I had jeans that had looked like they had pockets, but they were just fake. I'm
or
like,
they sew them shut.
Yeah.
That's why.
Why are they stitching them shut? You have to get a seam ripper and rip them open.
Like, what is the point of that?
And then when they do have pockets, you can't even fit your fingers in them because they're so small.
That's why I got my jeans at Old Navy, because they do actual fucking pockets.
Yeah,
they do.
Good to know.
So I know.
Not just that, but I feel like there's more freedom to not have to follow trends. We can all kind of pick out our own personal style, and we don't have to change that every couple of years with what everybody else is finding trendy.
Yeah.
I can wear the same outfit for 30 years and nobody says anything to me, because if they did, I would scream at them. So
well, that's the thing, is even if you're supposed to do that, I'm not, because I don't give a fuck.
No, I like what I like, and I don't, I keep waiting for
black dresses to work every day. So basically,
I'm old enough that I keep waiting for the things I like to just come back into style a few years later.
Yeah.
Like, it may not be out now, but in 2 years, this is going to roll back around, and I'll be able to buy long sweaters again.
Style. I just don't care.
Oh, it's not the style. It's just because then you can buy more of it. Yeah. There's more available.
And one thing I've definitely noticed on the body positivity front is that I can remember when I was younger and women would wear clothes that they liked, but people would still make fun of them because they were larger, even if it looked good on them. But now it's definitely like people, like if a woman wants to wear shorts, no matter what size she is, it's like, it's okay, because it's like, as long as she's comfortable and is happy. Like,
sometimes you get comments that you're so brave.
Okay, yeah, that's
which is a whole bucket of bullshit.
It's the same. It's the same.
I'm not brave. I'm hot. It's
exactly.
I'm not being brave. I'm not fighting a war. I'm not running into a building to save a cat. I'm wearing shorts. This is dumb.
You run into the same thing as you age, because it used to be, and it's still there. There still are women, who say, "Well, as long as you wear something age appropriate." Well, what the heck is age appropriate? I mean, do you have to walk around looking like you're 115 when on the inside if you got it, you want to flaunt it, you want to wear something colorful, you want to wear something easy, and there still are people who are older that just are as stylish as anybody else, and other women will say, "Oh my God, how what does who does she think she is? She thinks she's 15 years old." That's other women. It's not like slut shaming,
it's always
but it's
other
age. It's age shaming, and we shouldn't do that. If you feel good in something, wear it, and it doesn't make any difference.
I wouldn't have nice things to say to those women that were saying that to other women.
For one thing that for me is a personal battle, is I hate shaving my legs.
No, I'm not shaving them.
I haven't shaved my legs
a big
for a long time. But I love wearing skirts and dresses.
I don't give a fuck.
And the last year that has been where I am at. Like I can actually wear shorts and go shopping, and I'm like, I don't care, because guess what? I don't want to look like prepubescent child.
Also, I don't shave. I shave my armpits just because it's a personal thing, because I don't like catching, in the corner of my eye. I don't like it, know. That's my own personal thing. The rest, I don't care.
You start to realize that nobody is paying attention to that stuff as much as you are. Nobody's looking at your legs.
If someone is rubbing your leg, they have another they're heading somewhere else. Their intentions lie elsewhere. No one cares about your legs.
Yeah. Exactly.
Let me be real clear. They're heading north. That's it.
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
I know some of these things to some of the listeners may sound trivial in terms of women's issue, but your image that you have of yourself is so important, that you feel relaxed with yourself, that you feel you can move with this skirt or this pair of pants or this jacket, and you can move and negotiate through business, through pleasure, through casual times. It brings out your real self, because you feel more empowered, you feel good, you look good, and you just give off a much more positive feel. And if someone is negative to you during the day, you can say, screw you, I feel better. I feel I look better than you, and I feel better than you, and I don't care. And you can
honestly, trivializing it takes away its weight. Like you're just like, oh, it's just silly, but it actually matters. If it matters to you, it matters.
It does.
Well, and self-esteem is such a pivotal cornerstone to life, because think about in a job, if you have self-esteem, you're more likely to speak up for ethical violations. You're more likely to stand up to anyone, being sexist or doing things that are wrong. In your romantic relationships, if you have self-esteem, if someone...
You put up with way less.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
If someone...
Your lines are real close to you.
Yes, exactly. If someone even makes is passive aggressive, you're more likely to speak up to it and be like, okay, what's going on? And you're not going to accept someone being physically violent towards you. You're not going to...
unless it's consensual and you've agreed to it ahead of time.
Of course, 100%.
That caveat, sorry.
But also, even in that, if you're self-confident, you're more likely to express your desires and your wants in the sexual space, because you're not going to be like, do whatever you want. I'm just here for your pleasure. Exactly.
No, fuck that.
Well, the interesting...
Or what am I supposed to look like, or what am I supposed to act like? You're more comfortable just being you.
Exactly.
I think in the U.S. as well as Canada, women have to wear at least cap sleeves. They can't expose their shoulders.
It depends.
In Canada this last summer, it was interesting because a lot of the women decided to rebel one day, and they walked into the Parliament with their arms bare. And I think they're at this point modifying the rules, which is still, speaking about clothing, it still holds you back. If women are forced to cover their bodies, then there's something that needs to be done.
Sorry.
They need to figure out why they're covering it.
Just to interject, that wasn't Parliament. That was the Victoria Legislative Assembly in Victoria.
Thanks for mansplaining that to us.
Just, skeptics were just being...
Yeah.
So it depends on where you are in America.
No, that's true. Kevin can be
most
my
places, like my work, you can have
checker.
You can have your sleeves, your arms bare, but you can't have spaghetti straps. It's not professional. They've deemed it not professional. So
fair enough.
But you can have a tank top or tank dress or.
It's good because I live in those.
Yeah,
I do too. And then I have because I'm a woman, and you know how they set office buildings for men's temperatures and not women's.
Yep.
That's another thing.
Oh yeah.
I have 2 sweaters in my car and 1 sweater in my drawer at work because I am ready for anything.
Yeah.
So I have my tank dress. They're black or blue or gray, and I have all of my tank dresses, and then I have all my sweaters, and so I just decide which one I want to wear.
You gotta layer.
No,
I have to
totally layer.
Because I'm freezing at work, but then I'm hot because I live in Texas. So as soon as I leave the building, I take it off, and I've walked out with people before, and I do that, and they're like, "Woo!" I'm like, "No, I'm not getting sexy. I'm getting warm. I'm getting comfortable."
Now, I do have a question.
I feel bad for men. Oh, go ahead.
Going back to what Kristina was talking about with the self-esteem that was posed by our silent partner over here. Can you have too much self-esteem?
I don't think
so.
You can have too much self-esteem.
Yeah.
I think you can have too much
Confidence?
self-importance.
Yeah.
Like thinking that, because it's not self-esteem that I think you can have too much of. I think it's
narcissism.
Well, yeah. It's when you aren't grounded in reality. I don't think that's too much self-esteem.
How I phrase it in my own head is I want the self-importance of a mediocre white man.
I know, right?
That's what I aspire to.
I don't think you can have...
I am not there.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can have too much self-esteem. But if it turns into arrogance and it turns into demeaning other people, now you're totally in a different category. I don't think you can have... I don't think you can have too much self-esteem.
It's really interesting because when you think about it, self-esteem is one, like say it's on an X and Y axis, self-esteem is one, but then there's also your humility on another.
Yeah.
Because you can be super humble with a fuck ton of self-esteem, but then you can also be like super narcissistic with a lot of self-esteem. And that I
one
think
of them is self-esteem, I feel like, is just how you feel about yourself personally. Whereas when it crosses over into how you think
about
other
yourself
people
in
should see
relation to others.
Exactly.
I think that's when you start hitting those problems.
That's the narcissistic versus humble.
Yeah.
When you're too narcissistic, no matter if you have lots of because you can get people with narcissism with very low self-esteem. That is still not okay. But
that's actually when it's most dangerous almost, because then they're just determined to get everyone around them below them.
Yeah. To make
and they're already low.
You know who doesn't have a problem with either one is Donald Trump.
Oh my God.
That man is humble. Humble
with
as a church mouse.
With good reason. Have you seen
Yes.
Have you
seen that ass?
It's amazing. I have.
Yes. Donald Trump is the definition of a grandiose narcissist.
Yes.
He is the definition. But I think when people talk about self-esteem, I don't think you can ever have too much self-esteem, because self-esteem is being comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can ever be too comfortable in your own skin, because when you're uncomfortable in your own skin, then that's where you get a lot of that's where a lot of mental illness comes from. Where you're not okay with yourself.
Well, that's also it feeds it. It's twofold.
Yeah.
Because if it's hard to have self-esteem if you have your brain telling you you're a piece of shit constantly.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's a problem. This also kind of plays into the whole women thing, where you have all this self-esteem. Like when I was single for a minute and people were interested in me, I was like, why wouldn't they be? I'm amazing. I'm like this amazing catch. I'm probably the best person they're ever going to talk to. And then I'm just like, oh my God, seriously, you need to stop this. Have you seen your kitchen, your dishes, and you gained 5 pounds, and whatever, like all this stuff in my head. And so it's hard to stay there, because you always start talking yourself out of it. Like you have this great self-esteem, and then you start reminding yourself why it's not warranted.
Yeah. Well, and I think with self-esteem, it gets mixed up with self-importance. So when someone has a lot of self-esteem, people on the outside are like, oh, well, you're narcissistic. But when that's not actually the case, because
narcissist is a specific diagnosis.
Well, exactly. Yeah. So like I think, and especially for women, when they are self-confident, they get called narcissistic.
A bitch.
Yeah.
A bitch.
Where they're just being comfortable in themselves and expressing their values and their opinions.
Yeah. So I think one thing is, would you and anyone here answering, would you say that we're heading in the right direction for women and their equality?
Oh, always. I think we're always progressing. It's just how long it takes and
the little bumps in the
road.
How
patient we can be. It's kind of baby steps, but I think we're always moving in that right direction.
I think we're moving in that right direction, but you have situations in the states where they're still where the Republicans are still trying to overturn abortion, which will rob us of our inalienable rights, for sure. So whether or not as women we will be able to overcome that in some way and still move forward is going to be interesting. If Roe does get overturned, then we've got another battle. Are we going to move forward from that? Yes, but we're going to have a definite.
But I also think those are relics of the past, trying to hold on as much as possible, because those.
Well, and I think it's a minority. You've got this minority group of evangelical Christians who have figured out how to get into those positions of power, which is what we need to focus more on, is getting more women into office. And so once they have that power, they do that kind of shit, because that's, and the rest of us go, how did that happen? Well, it happened because we weren't paying attention, not because there's more of them and less of us.
And in that, I definitely think we are moving in the right direction, because there are more women in politics. There's more people speaking out against the current politicians trying to pull down Roe versus Wade. We're aware of it, and we're trying the hardest that they can to like stop it.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that's a good indicator that women as a whole and society as a whole is moving to a more progressive place.
Yeah. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation, like about just women and. Hi,
we could
Kevin.
do like a live podcast-a-thon for 24 hours.
We probably could about this, but I know, Amy, that you have to head out somewhat soon here. So
Amy's a diva.
I have to shower. I know. I have my
diva.
My rigid social schedule that I have to adhere to.
So thank you so much for joining us. If anyone wants to find your podcast, where can they find it?
Our website is delightfulbitchcraft.com. Sorry, Amy.
I was just going to say they can fucking Google it because it's not hard.
So, Secular Soup. We're the only ones out there.
Yep, Secular Soup Podcast, or go to delightfulbitchcraft.com. We just announced this week. We're starting a thing where we want different people to record our outro for us. So it would be cool if you guys wanted to record some outros. We're just going to rotate them every week, so you can make funny ones or serious ones. I'll get you the script, and
so far I'm sleeping with all the people that have done our outro, and I can't. I don't have that kind of manpower.
So she'll get up to Canada eventually. Don't worry.
Nice.
Yeah. So we need to expand out. So
yeah.
All right. And before you ladies head out, can we get you to say hi? This is Amy and Amy from Secular Soup, and we took a left at the Valley.
See if we can do this better than last time.
We can't sync it up. Okay.
Okay, ready? Okay, follow my lead. This is Amy.
And Amy
and we took from Secular Soup
Podcast.
And we took a left at the Valley.
That was worse.
That was beautiful.
That was
so
way
beautiful.
better. Way better.
Oh
we
my
love
God.
It.
Wow, you should say it and I should be like, yup.
There we go.
All right. Thank you, Amy and Amy, for joining us today.
They're great.
That was a fantastic conversation.
It was.
And I feel like we could have just gone on for literal hours, as usual.
Yeah, hear you breathing in the background.
You can't keep me down for long.
I think he was a good boy for most of it. So he deserves to have the duct tape taken off.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how the facial hair fared with that, though.
Yeah, he'll survive.
He will. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and thank you for listening. If you want to find us, you can follow us at leftatthevalley.com, on Facebook, on Twitter at LATV Podcast. Send us an email to leftatvalley@outlook.com. Please leave us a 5-star review wherever you find us. It helps us and helps others find the show, and it makes us feel good about ourselves.
Hell yeah.
If you like our nonsense so much that you can't get enough of it, you can become a Patreon. Just go to Patreon/LATV for more content and a behind-the-snes look.
You get more of our rambles.
You do get more of our rambles.
Yes.
Great job.
Proud of her. Look at you go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh.
No, Kirsten, you did a fabulous job.
I wrote that this morning.
I can almost forgive you for dropping a piano on me now.
I knew you could pull this off just better than anybody else. Thanks.
This is the part I was most confident in.
Yeah. Good job.
Not gonna lie.
Good job. Yeah.
Great show, ladies. Anything else we need to add?
What's coming up?
Some great shows down the line.
I don't know. I want
don't
to
have a
say
schedule.
something, but I don't know what to say. Hug a tree. There we go.
Sure.
Go hug a tree.
Hug a tree.
Thank you so much, ladies. Until next time.
Promotes mystery. I'd rather see the truth than to bask in my own ignorance.
Oh, it's so hard for you to be quiet, wasn't it?
Oh, you have no idea.
It was. It was very... I can't believe you guys were complaining about clothing. You guys have the gamut of everything clothing in the world, and you're complaining about it?
Kevin, fuck you.
No pockets.
You have fucking pockets.
Kevin,
You buy pants with pockets. Buy guy pants.
No, but guy pants aren't designed for the female body.
Well, yeah, but you can wear anything you want. And the only thing we have is put on a 3-piece suit. That's about the only option we have.
Yeah, that's because.
To look up. So we all look like penguins.
Go on Pinterest and look at hipster outfits. I'm sorry,
God.
You have options.
Who the hell wants to be a
Have you
hipster?
seen Billy?
I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. And let me take a sec, don't mean to sound so hateful, but I swear to God, pun intended, I find it disgraceful that thousands of children are raped by priests, and since they're holy men of God, they get away scot-free. And the Pope does his very best to keep it on the hush. Don't wanna affect business, he loves money too much. We know that they love the kids, but how the fuck can we protect them while they planning to molest them? We teaching them to respect them.
Fuck that.
The system is broke down, working backwards, and the only action or tactic I plan to practice now is to attack them. The parties of God's hands are bloodstained, millions of murders by believers, and they're all in God's name. And let me take a sec, don't mean to sound so hateful, but I swear to God, pun intended, I find it disgraceful that many atheists are told to be quiet